everyone. Welcome to India Speaks Daily. Today we have a special guest with us, Sri Jerome Antoji, and we're going to talk about certain issues. We're going to specifically talk about the Western media, the international media coverage of issues pertaining to religion in India, religious issues in India. But before I start welcoming my esteemed guest, I just want to talk a bit about the issue at hand. The media frames issues in a certain way. It kind of determines how you as public respond to those issues. Guys, most of the time we tend to think of news as being something neutral and unbiased, but the reality is that most of the media, unfortunately, manipulates news and media coverage in such a way that certain issues get way more highlighted, while certain issues are completely silenced and they get completely brushed under the carpet. So the media actually sets the agenda of telling public which issues you have to think about, which issues you should talk about, and what issues you should not talk about. And it's a very clever tactic, it's a very clever ploy, because technically the media is not even doing any kind of inaccurate reportage. It's simply skipping those issues. So if you don't even hear anything about those issues in the TV debates or in the newspapers, then how would you know that such issues even exist? Today, we are specifically going to talk about the international media, and the international media specifically in the context of India. How does it look at religious issues in India? Be it the issue of minorities, be it the issue of Christian conversions in India, or be it issues related to Hinduism and Hindutva. Does the international media, especially the Western media, have a biased agenda? Do they have an ulterior motive? Or are they unbiased and impartial? And what is this whole game plan all about? So today we are going to discuss all of these things with Sri Jerome Antoji. So I welcome to India Speaks Daily Sri Jerome Antoji, who is a politico-religious observer and an anti-conversion activist, and he's spoken extensively, on issues relating to, sort of religion in India, the way religious conversions have become an industry, especially in the context of Christian conversions, and a lot of other issues. So, Namaskar, Jerome Antoji. Welcome to India Speaks Daily.
Thank you so much for inviting me on your show, and I assure you we will have a very constructive and a lot of clarity discussion. Thank you so much for inviting.
Thank you, sir. So, coming to the first question, last time, of course, we spoke extensively, specifically, about the nitty-gritties of the whole industry of Christian conversions in India. But this time, we are looking at how the international media sets the whole narrative. So, my first question to you would be, the international media, and if you see the news reports, it always seems to be worried about the rise of intolerance and Hindutva fascism in India. These are the two, darling favorite terms of the international media, especially the Western media. So, do you think it's a justified viewpoint?
When we speak about the media, and especially the media which beams from the west or the south, the other part of the world, we are talking about the Western media which has a lot of clout, and which once upon a time we used to look up to for credible information. I'm sure many of us would have watched this latest BBC documentary. I remember in our childhood, and all of us remember in our childhood, to understand what actually was happening in India, to authenticate that, we used to actually watch the BBC. And I remember my parents and a lot of other people used to say it was also told on the BBC. Today, the West has used it towards its advantage, and being a nationalist, what I see is this: the West is unable to digest the resurgence of a native land, which was a colony of the West. They're not able to digest it, and for some reason or the other, they have been trying to find fault. And in the last 8 to 10 years, India has moved leaps and bounds, and it's so explicit that the West is unable to digest it. So whether it is pinpointing on the religious aspect, whether or the political aspect, the economical aspect, they I feel my personally feel that they're not able to tolerate it, and that is where they've been time and again bombarding with news, typecasted news. I would say news which is very well built and camouflaged to demoralize the people of a country. So it's a very good
So it
ploy because it's a very good ploy because today the media has come to your fingertips, and people take it for granted, especially we in India take it for granted that anything that comes from the West, where a white man says, is true.
Yeah, so can we so then say that, demonizing Hinduism and talking about minority persecution in India and all these things, it becomes a ploy for, kind of trying to cancel the growth story of India and to deflect the attention of Indian people, especially I think the Indian youth, and trying to convince them that everything is wrong in India.
Correct. So see the aspects which they can pinpoint are religion, because that's the only thing that cannot need not be verified. But when it comes to India, they have joined hands and they want to portray India as undemocratic, as religiously intolerant, because these are the news and information that need not be verified and can be consumed without any doubt. So that's the reason why the West also understands how to bring down the morale of the people, and the target audience is very clear because we have the largest number of youth, and I said around the age of 30-35 across in the globe from a population point of view. So, and they are more susceptible to such information. So it's a very well thought out strategy and ploy to bring down our nation.
I think so. As you rightly mentioned, and this has been brought out by many other intellectuals as well. That in context of India, the so-called left wing and the extreme right wing, which is the the Christian supremacists, they in fact get together. Their differences are all set aside when it comes in the context of India. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, my next question, coming to my next question, would be like we talked about in the last episode, the whole industry of Christian conversions in India, how entire states are being targeted. For example, now Punjab is the next target. So, what do you perceive of the Western media's, coverage of this issue of Christian conversions in India? Does it cover this issue at all? Does the media?
It does because see when we're talking about Punjab, it was not in the news for many years, right? And it is a very recent origin when it comes to the conversion attempts in Punjab, because we all know Punjab has been going through issues for the last 10-20 years, and these missionaries have a very good understanding of the ground reality understanding. For example, if you look at the earlier days, around 50 years or so, the target was Tamil Nadu and adjoining south, and of course the northeast. Northeast also is a very recent origin, because they look at, they see, it's the conversion is not a blanket approach. Like a typical corporate, there is a strategy being built. Look at which are the vulnerable areas, what are the issues which can be used to divide the population, and then portray that as an issue, and then trumpet that as something that they are a flag bearers. For example, before 1947, they were actually ruthless in ruling our nation, the Westerners, especially the English, the British. But post that, what happened was this: once they moved out, they want to be the saviors now. Until 1947, they were the people who were ruthless in ruling us. They used probably every part of their machinery to overpower us. But once they left us, they want to show that they are the saviors. So for example, in the south, Tamil Nadu was, they were very strategical in understanding the ground reality, and they cleverly divided the Dravidian movement. They picked out the Dravidian movement. Let me give you a history. For example, if we look at similar such incidents across the globe, an example which comes to me of very recent is Rwanda in Africa. They
Yes.
very smartly, if I'm not wrong, Belgium, was the country which was ruling, which had colonized Rwanda, and then the missionaries had a very high upper hand in Rwanda. So what they to get inroads, because they are a small number of people, they wanted to get inroads into the power struggle. So they divided the people based on the tribes, the two major tribes, the Tutsis and the Hutsis. So they just divided them on a simple fact that the nose, the nose is straight or the nose is flat. Based on that, they divided them and they played the what do you call, dividing them, saying that one is higher and the other one is lower. If you look at the same strategy is used here in India also. For example, if you look Tamil Nadu, the Dravidian movement saying that okay, we are the downtrodden, we are the people, we are isolated, we are not Indians, we are not Hindus. So this is all built, the narrative is built by the church, and this
And
all
does the
happens.
media, does the Western media then, forward this narrative? Do they whitewash conversions like, media like the BBC and all of that?
They don't whitewash conversion. Actually, they don't talk about conversion. What they do is this: they come in as a savior. They portray themselves as saviors, basically the supremacist attitude, no? Like they want to say that they are superior and they are the ones who are rescuing the downtrodden. So this game plan is one of the strategies that has been employed across the globe in different civilizations.
Yeah. So, for example, I saw a BBC documentary, like in video in context of Punjab, which we were talking about. So the documentary is, very trying to cleverly. It looks like very good journalism. You won't be able to say that there's any bias, but it's very cleverly presenting you only one side of the viewpoint. So it's showing those interviews and people who are saying that, this whoever is saying that we are being forcefully converted is doing propaganda. It's our own wish. The whole developmental story, like you said, the white man coming and reforming people.
Correct, correct. Yeah, yes, because
Yeah.
Punjab is the latest hunting ground, because they know that there is turbulence because of the several movements that are happening in Punjab and several ground level issues, in Punjab. So they know that that is a wherever there's turbulence, they would somehow get in to the grassroots level and take sides, fund them enormously, and then of course build a narrative and uh, make documentaries and visuals which suits the external world. They're a very very clever ploy. See, nothing is an accident, especially when it comes to the Western media. There's no accident. Everything is a planned activity. I would say even an accident is a planned accident. So that's the way it works. It's very very cleverly planned and executed.
Yes, absolutely, sir. One of the ways, in fact, it builds the narrative is by, like you said, not talking about actually conversion at all, but portraying the converted people or the missionaries as victims and routinely concentrated on, any stray incident of violence against, the sort of the missionaries and completely omitting the other side. Because we see these kind of stories routinely in international media that, Bajrang Dal did this or this Hindu group vandalized the church and these kind of stories, right?
Correct. So one of the easiest ploys is this, is the constant denial of conversion happening, and if anybody is caught red-handed, then classify it as a very stray incident, or an activity which is trying to help the lower strata of the society. So the whole conversion mechanism works, saying with camouflaged with the idea of saying that we have come to serve the society. This is so contrary to the fact that these people who have come to serve us actually have enough turbulence in their own nations, in their own countries. There are enough drug abuses, families being broken, and so much of devastation, and socially and morally they are broken. Instead of taking care of themselves, they feel that it is we who need the schooling more than them. For example, I was talking to a very good friend of mine in Australia just today. He's a Christian friend. I was asking him, how's the church activities there, and does he go to church regularly? And he said there's nobody who goes to church in Australia. The family is life is broken. The morality is broken. On a weekend, people only go to pubs and bars and discotheques and spend their time off. Churches are empty in those nations, but if you look at the kind of uh, funding, the kind of effort that Australia has been putting on India is beyond is to a large is much is compared to what the West also is, the other side of the globe also is doing. So Australia has a very strategic interest in converting people in India. But then, if you look at Australia itself, you see what happens in their societies. I've been asking them, what do you hear about things in India? They say
Yeah.
we have not heard about any conversions in India, but we know exactly what is happening, which means that there is a very strategic ploy that is employed from different parts of the globe, and Australia definitely is one of the nations.
Yes, so you're right. In fact, this brings us to one case study, the Australian, missionary Graham Staines, who was murdered many years back. And the whole news, was sort of painted the whole story in a certain light. Like, of course, this is not justifying anybody's murder. It is a crime. But then, do you think the news coverage, which was there at that time, it was biased and one-sided?
See, nobody talks about what happened prior to what Graham Staines was doing in India. Nobody questioned that. And what preceded this whole incident, as much as you said, we don't justify violence or any kind of such acts. But what was Graham Staines doing in India? What was his family doing in India? That is the first question. Nobody as of today has questioned what was Graham Staines doing in India when there was enough turbulence in Australia. Let me bring this to your notice and to those people who do not know the prevailing situations in 1990s in Australia. In all my education about history of Australia, I only know, or my textbooks told, that there was no habitation in Australia. Only the white men went to Australia and they built habitation. That's one of the biggest lies what I would say our textbooks told and the West told. Australia had the indigenous people, the Aboriginals. But these people who went, the white men who went there, they destroyed them, and also they devastated their whole families, the whole society. And in the year, in if I'm not wrong, in 1992, the Australian government issued an unconditional apology to the Aboriginals for the crimes that they have inflicted on the Aboriginals, the original indigenous people. Graham Staines could have stayed back in Australia and mended the wounds of those people instead of coming all the way to India and involved in so-called service activity. Nobody has questioned this as of now. I would want people to go back to history and find out what actually happened in 1990s. At the same time, when Graham Staines came to India, the amount of torture, the amount of violence, the amount of pain that the white man has inflicted on the Aboriginals, the indigenous people of Australia, is a very sorrowful story to hear. So I would say, while I condemn how he was killed and his children was killed, I would say he had better business to do in Australia than in India.
Also,
Not to
I think,
forget,
yeah.
not to forget that the amount of activities, conversion activities, Graham Staines and his family was doing in Orissa, and the amount of violence, amount of what do you call that, dirtying the ecosystem in the tribals of Orissa. So nobody questions this. No, the Western media is very clear. The church is very clear. The Christian community is very clear. They want one victim. They play the victim card. Victim card is enough to actually garner global news I'm sure we all knew, right? The death of Graham Staines became a global news, and then the focus on missionaries became much more on India.
Yeah, I was in fact, shocked to learn this. I was doing some research and some alternative sources that Graham Staines even had, allegations of sexual abuse against him by some local
Correct,
woman, and this was 2 3 days before, his death. Yeah, so a
correct,
lot of
correct.
different kind of very disturbing allegations, not just conversion, but very disturbing allegations against him.
Correct. In fact, I think if I'm not wrong, if you go back to the Wadhwa report also, uh, I mean, there are a lot of things which was explicitly there, which I felt was omitted due to a lot of pressure from the missionaries themselves, and of course the connivance of the system, no, the administrative system. There's a lot of connivance that happened, because of which it was clearly whitewashed, and again, the white man was upheld as a person who sacrificed his life to bring civilization into our nation.
Yeah, they've even apparently made a film on him recently, which is again called a propaganda film because it talks nothing about his conversion. It just
Correct.
portrays him like a martyr. It doesn't talk anything about conversion as if it's not happening at all.
Absolutely. See, in
Yeah.
fact, Christianity is thrived on this, on the across the globe, portraying martyrdom, because one martyr is enough to bring in more conversions. So they patronize these kind of stories, uh, which could not be related to religion itself. It could be because they were involved in some other activity, but then when the locals rebel on these things, it is perceived and it is portrayed as aversion towards or hatred towards the missionaries, and likewise,
So, sir, coming to the topic of the need for an anti-conversion law in India, the Western media, the likes of BBC, even German broadcaster Deutsche Welle, they have they seem to be very disturbed by this, and they're routinely carrying news reports, insinuating that if such a law comes into force, the Christians will feel very unsafe in India, they will be harassed and this and that. So, why is the Western media so troubled by the possibility of an anti-conversion law in India?
The first time when the anti-conversion law was proposed in our nation post independence, if I'm not wrong, was somewhere in 1970s. At that time itself, spearheaded by Mother Teresa and other people, there was a lot of noise about and caution, and also threat, soft threats saying that anti-conversion law should not be implemented in India. I remember there are a lot of processions and candlelight uh, processions across India, and especially, if I'm not wrong, in Bombay and Calcutta and all that. So there's always a fear that the fact that the indigenous people will rise up. There's a fear. The missionaries are fearing that the indigenous people will rise up and bring the anti-conversion law. Strangely but surprisingly, this is the only probably nation across the face of the globe where the majority is asking for an anti-conversion law. Whereas if you look at other nations, it is a minority which is scared of being converted into the majority, and it is the minority which always talks about fear. But here, strangely, 70 to 80% of the population being Hindus, they are the ones who are demanding for anti-conversion law. I call it the tyranny of the minority. So
Yeah.
on one, that's on one side. Second thing is this, from an anti-conversion law, I hope you're also aware that I'm also one of the members who have filed a PIL in the Supreme Court seeking for the intervention of the Supreme Court in asking the government to investigate and ponder on the whole concept of the conversion, because for some reason we've been finding that there is not much effort from the central government. As of now, it's around 6 to 7 states have implemented it, which I'm not very happy, because I would call them more as a toothless tiger. The anti-conversion law, there is no, I would say, there is no clear, what do you call, the strategy to handle it, because in spite of all the anti-conversion law being implemented in 7 states, how many convictions have happened? And right under the nose of those state administrations, conversions have been happening, because these people who have been involved in the conversion are very, very smart. They know the system very well, they know the law very well, they know how to hoodwink the law and how to penetrate those places which the law will not be able to touch.
So what does
That
your
is
PIL focus on? Are you talking specifically about how the law, if it has to be done, it has to be made stronger and more this thing?
So, from a PIL point of view, my contention to the Supreme Court has been to bring notice to the government, to make an to send an instruction to the government, or I would say bring the government to the forefront, retrospect on the whole idea, and then take legitimate actions. Now that is something that, because that's a larger, it's a much larger work that needs to be done, and the government needs to really take cognizance of this. Currently, we see that there's a lot of appeasement that is happening, and the government is not very keen on, because of the whole vote bank itself. So what we have appealed to the Supreme Court is that they send a directive to the government to take appropriate action.
Yes, I think that's important and that's the right approach. So, sir, almost coming to the final part of the interview, I mean, one of the most contentious issues I'd like to talk about, which everybody is discussing these days, the issue of, Bageshwar Dham Baba. And it's been, of course, in the news lately. Our media is also doing the same thing, but the Western media, especially, seems to be obsessed with painting Bageshwar Baba in a negative light. And I saw reports in BBC, basically it seems like very innocent at first. They're just writing about him, but then they're, taking some interviews of his childhood like friends, some people who live near his house, who are now insinuating that, he has grabbed the land here, there. So basically trying to portray, this this Hindu religious, very strong religious figure, as some kind of a, it's basically as some kind of an imposter. So why is the Western media so troubled, with the rising this thing influence of Baba Bageshwar?
I'm sure this is because the missionaries are being threatened by the rise of people like Sri Sri, Sadguru, and Bageshwar. They're all playing their part. I like the way Bageshwar ji portrays himself, because he talks about his whole contention is nationalism, and he is not against any religion, is what I saw a couple of interviews. But he says you need to you need to be nationalistic, is what I think. But generally, the missionaries don't like competition. And the Western media, when you say about Western media, the Western media smelled, I think it smelt the rat, because the kind of following that Bageshwar Rao has been having is compare, or I would say it's superseding the contemporary missionaries. So that's where I think, so they will definitely keep finding fault, saying that he is a fraud, he is a land grabber. So there'll be a lot of acquisitions that will come. I hope he stays. I mean, very dynamic, very energetic, and very, I would say, uh, I like his arrogance. I like his arrogance because he's very, very, very confident about it. And I think I saw a couple of his interviews, amazing. And I would say, he instills a lot of confidence on the locals. And I think
So I think
he's definitely a threat to the missionaries.
that's why, the Western media is alarmed, because he also, is very vocal against conversion. And he's unapologetically, about his beliefs, about Sanatan Dharma. He's very completely unapologetic in your face that this is my belief. And I believe he also has done some, Ghar Wapsi, so they are very threatened by him.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. So,
There's a resurgence.
just, yeah.
I would say
Yes.
there's a resurgence. There is a resurgence on the in India, and of course, ever since 2014, the we see a lot of changes that have happened, and the West in general and the missionaries in specific in our nation are somehow getting a feeling that the time is up for them, and there is a nation which is rising, and they're not able to tolerate that. So it will happen. I foresee this happening until these narratives are crushed by numbers and proof. We have seen the kind of development that has happened. For example, India has surpassed the UK. So, from an economic point of view, so there are a lot of changes that will happen, and I'm sure the West is not able to tolerate it and digest it. And I would say
Yeah.
purely it is pure jealousy.
Yeah. So just one final question, and then we'll wrap it up. So, in context of this whole thing, like we saw, does the West have double standards, different standards when it comes to reporting on Hinduism related things, and when it comes to reporting on Christianity related things?
The West, uh, yes, has double standards, and it has
The Western media, I mean, yeah. Yeah.
the West and the Western media, I would say, West and the Western media, because we see that whether it's diplomatically, whether it is building narratives on our nation, it is unable to tolerate it. So there is a biased way of reporting that is happening, and they felt they all this while they felt that we would not grow out of these webs, so we're growing out now, and when it comes to the economy, when it comes to politics, when it comes to the very fact that democratically the democratic system, we are just getting stronger and stronger, and we are becoming a model for the rest of the globe, which a good section of those people, of those nations which has a vested interest, which had a vested interest all this while, they are unable to tolerate it because it is going out of their hands.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Jerome ji. It was wonderful interacting with you again.
Thank you so
And
much. And I
we soon have to hope to have yet another session, because there are a lot of issues we need to talk about this whole business of conversion, and not just conversion, but the way Hinduism is demonized, and the way India is being targeted by the West. All these issues are interconnected and interlinked. So thank you so much. Namaskar.
namaskar. Thank you so much.